He's simply known as Number One. Stephen Durnley is the founder of the over-40s Ulysses Motorcycle Club. The 79-year-old today set off to circumnavigate Australia using Highway 1. It's a three-pronged journey to raise money for the Arthritis Foundation and awareness of the club.
And the third to see if I can do it before I turn 80. I'll be 80 this year.
Stephen started in Sydney and by this afternoon he'd reached Port Macquarie, leaving the Central Coast and the Hunter in his tracks. A stop in Bulahdelah allowed the Ulysses clan to let Number One know they're right behind him. Stephen humbled that his clubmates are living out the motto, growing old disgracefully.
Enjoying themselves, living life. That's what it's all about.
Gary Blair, NBN News. Today's gathering in Newcastle revealed the human face of the families affected by Mission Australia's decision to hand back disability care and training services to the state government. Recent anxiety briefly put aside to celebrate a milestone for the oldest parent affected by the change. It's Harold Moore's 79th birthday, but her mind is on the future care of 56-year-old son Jamie rather than celebration.
I'm, not young, and I won't be here for that long to care for him. And the thing that I would like before I die would be to see Jamie settled.
The parents have demanded the government show their children respect when a new operator for disability services is selected.
I mean, our kids are Australian citizens. They're not second-class citizens, nor they are cuts of meat to be sold off to the lowest bidder.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
The Scone Ball got the horse festival underway at the racecourse last night. The 23rd staging of the event pays homage to the Year of the Outback. Today, the main street was thrown open to the festival's namesake as this year's VIP Ken McCallum led the parade along Kelly Street. Scone's celebration of its links with all things equine will climax on Friday with the Scone Cup.
Forced to move from its old track around 8 months ago, the Hunter Mountain Bike Club's new 2-kilometre course in the thick of Heaton State Forest has meant one thing: more speed. That suits 17-year-old Chris Vine. This is practically his backyard and the place he'll do the most practice before his tilt at a world title later this year.
Yeah, so I'm stoked. I can't believe I'm actually going over there. I got the phone call from Scott Sharples, the Australian coach, and it was awesome.
He made it 4 from 4 today to virtually wrap up the Under-19 State Championship. It was a Queenslander, Matthew Tate, that won today's elite men's division from the state's number 2 ranked rider, Brad Kelly. But just completing this challenging course looks achievement enough.
It's actually worse to watch than actually when you do it, because when you watch, you go, oh, it's really scary when you see guys having stacks and everything. But when you do it, you you're more concentrating your focus on what you have to do, and it's easy actually to do it.
We'll take his word for it. After some softening up, Carl Freeman had the first real chance of the game. The net wasn't the only target. Highfields had the radar on only one thing, and after the ball fell for Tony Majerowski, the powerful Azzurri striker showed why he's one of the deadliest in the league. Paul Wheeler almost steered the home side into a 2-0 lead, while his defence at the back also had heads turning. Smith's chip for Bet McCauley beat them all, the post providing the last line of defence. Broadmeadow's magic touch eluding them in the first half. Holding a 1-0 lead is never easy, but Highfield's keeper Mark Wright was doing the right things. Few can stop Scott Maguire though, this close to goal. Both sides had chances to find a match winner, but 1-1 is how it stayed in a game Broadmeadow will rue for a number of missed chances. When Newcastle ran out for the second half against Western Division, the visitors had plenty to do, down 16-12. 5'8" Les Smith quickly turned things around, setting up Wayne March as the visitors grabbed the 2-point lead. The 5'8" was in the thick of things again soon after, this time doing the lead-up work for Jamie O'Connor, the fullback also injuring his leg. Western hit back in the worst kind of way, while Newcastle captain Scott Conley just kept the points flowing. It must have been some half-time talk as Newcastle continued to run riot. Smith had the home side spellbound. His pass for Brendan McKell was enough to get him clear as Newcastle ran in 5 unanswered tries. They did clock off a little early with Western crossing for some easy tries late in the game, something Newcastle will have to work on before this weekend's semi-final.
Quite a few points put on us today, and it's something to work towards. We need to improve our defence, obviously, if we're to go any further in this comp.
Meanwhile, in round 4 of Group 21, Muswellbrook cracked the half-century against Singleton, while Denman beat Scone.
Jesse Breckle moved to Stockton 18 months ago to be closer to his girlfriend and mother. Grieving friends today arrived at Ballast Ground Park at Stockton, off a point where Jesse's body was found inside a submerged car yesterday. Left in memory, flowers and a card bearing the message, Jesse loved forever. His family reported him missing on Saturday afternoon.
Inquiries commenced on the Saturday afternoon and police interviewed a number of people into Saturday night. Based on information obtained during those interviews, the person's last known location was identified as a park off Fullerton Street.
So far, police have been unable to find anyone who saw what happened, and they say it's too early to speculate on whether it was an accident or could perhaps involve something more sinister. Initial reports suggesting that a 30-year-old man directed police to the location of the car are incorrect, but that man is believed to have been with Jesse in the park on the night he disappeared. Police say it's unclear whether Jesse was in the car alone. Crash investigation officers are still investigating extensive vehicle tracks. A post-mortem today confirmed Jesse drowned. Police are appealing for anyone who may have seen Jesse or heard anything that night to contact Wallsend detectives on 49 560 799. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
You don't have to be all that young to be on the stage at Young People's Theatre. Seasoned performers Ron Gillette and Alan Richards feature in YPT's latest show. Written by Cole Porter, Kiss Me Kate is a show within a show centring on a 1950s theatre company.
And it's about two stars in the 50s who are ex-husband and wife, and then the leads in Taming of the Shrew, an actual Shakespearean play. And so they bring their love-hate relationship onto the play.
The 3-week season opens tomorrow night. Meantime, anyone who has ever suffered the antics of a neurotic music teacher will appreciate a new play coming to Newcastle's Civic Theatre next month. Edward Simpson and Jonathan Gavin star in Two Pianos, Four Hands.
It's about two young boys growing up, trying to become the greatest piano players of all time, and they don't quite get there.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Students were given a first-hand account of how Ken Marslew lost his son to violence after he was gunned down in Sydney in 1994. Ken has since committed his life to spreading the anti-violence message.
Kids obviously don't understand the full ramifications of it, and the fact that we've become desensitised as a society to a great deal of violence.
The Life Awareness Day at the Jesmond campus of Callaghan College was compulsory for these students as part of their HSC. It provided alternatives to violence which can be used in everyday life, both at school and beyond.
It's really important for us to move forward on violence in the schoolyard.
Talking about violence is one thing, but actively doing something about reducing it is another thing. It's my hope that the kids will relate to that and start doing something about it.
Williamtown, home of the nation's elite Hornet squadrons and at present a base being prepared for the future. In total it receives $17 million next financial year. $10 million begins the groundwork for the Airborne Early Warning and Control AWACS radar planes, which will sharpen the sting of the Hornet to secure ownership of our skies from around 2005. Defence personnel also benefit from $2 million for a new childcare facility. Investment welcomed by the region's business community.
But I think that you've got to say that the money that's being put in defence will cause jobs, will cause increases in infrastructure, and I think anything like that has got to be good for the community.
$85 million is earmarked for Canberra-funded roadworks from the F3 on the Central Coast, north to the Pacific Highway bypass of Karua, and for the New England Highway through the Hunter Valley. The budget did answer 2 Hunter Road funding questions. Money will flow from July next year for the Buckets Way upgrade, but there'll be no improvements at the intersection of the New England Highway and Weekleys Drive Thornton. The government says at this stage it's done enough to address motorist concerns. While infrastructure benefits, welfare organisations including the Samaritans are concerned the government has forgotten about low-income earners and fears for the disabled.
The country's doing very well, but the benefits aren't being shared equally, and there's a group of people being left behind, and they're the people that we support.
Hunter Labor MPs gave the budget a thumbs down. Shadow Federal Resources Minister Joel Fitzgibbon says the burden of greater border control and the war against terrorism will be borne by those with the least ability to pay, while Newcastle MP Sharon Grierson attacked the coalition for its failure to create jobs. Gary Blair, NBN News.
the message is really about, hey, look, let's lift our game and let's work together.
You could have been forgiven for thinking the Warriors had brought the long white cloud with them at Williamtown this morning, and while the fans did follow, the Kiwis aren't expecting the same reception at Energy Australia Stadium, a venue where they've never won.
We're not worrying about what's happened before, we're just worried about what's going to happen in 48 hours.
And that isn't entirely clear, with Newcastle not the only team missing key players. Kevin Campion's on Origin duty, while the injured Stacey Jones has been replaced by a non-specialist halfback in Motu Tony.
Look, Stacey hasn't missed many games for us, so we haven't had anyone fill in for us. So it's new for us to go into a game without Stacey playing.
But Jones and enemy territory aside, the Warriors still have their imposing pack to fall back on, and they know they'll need it in the face of a fired-up Knights front row. Matt Parsons, for one, says he feels better than he has in weeks.
Haig's given us a few days off as well, freshen us up a bit, and we all feel really good. I know the guys that play country and are backing up tomorrow night, I know we all feel pretty good.
Josh Perry too has plenty of motivation.
You know, missing out on the Origin and stuff, it just adds fuel to the fire, you know, and just have a big one this weekend and, you know, see what happens.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Well, what we've agreed is that we've now got a package of a program with the ambulance service and the emergency departments to ensure that ambulances are directed to the emergency department, which has the least waiting time.
One in 8 Australians will be affected by a brain or neurological disorder. 80-year-old Wallsend grandmother Lindsay Peat is among them.
Well, it's a bit of a nuisance and you can't think of things, you know.
Lindsay is considered to be at high risk of developing dementia and is so far one of 15 patients involved in a study at the Hunter Medical Research Institute. What causes dementia is still largely a mystery. A lesser-known condition is vascular dementia, which is believed to be linked to blood flow in the brain. But researchers in the Hunter believe they're onto something new. Neurologist Chris Levi heads the team. He believes the cause may have more to do with pulse waves.
Pulse waves are energy waves that move through the blood vessel wall. They are generated by the heart pumping blood into the blood vessels, but they move much quicker than the blood itself.
Dr. Levi believes that may affect the brain, and to test his theory, he's using MRI scanning technology to measure his patients' pulse changes and blood flow. The hope is to develop a test enabling quick diagnosis.
But once you understand the mechanism, then you can look at using treatments to perhaps intervene and stop that process.
Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
It's a time of year when the depth of Newcastle is well and truly tested. Adam Woolnough will make his debut, while James Wynne gets a rare chance to fill in for Andrew Johns at halfback. And tonight will be Jared O'Doherty's first ever run-on start in the side. A great feeling after a knee reconstruction ended a promising start to last season.
It was like sort of going from the penthouse to the cellar in 1 week, but made it sort of took a while to get over it, but back now and sort of trying to put those things in the past.
It might take Matt Gidley a little longer to forget his Origin omission, but tonight marks the start of his efforts to reclaim a sky blue jersey.
Yeah, it is a bit disappointing, but I mean, we've got a game Friday night, so all we can do is go back and play well with our club teams and hopefully be a chance for the next two.
A number of Knights, though, are probably feeling unlucky not to be with the Blues. Josh Perry and Matt Parsons both started for country last week and were overlooked as replacements for the injured Robbie Kearns. Both will lead the charge against the Warriors, who have their own concerns. The team that has never won in Newcastle will start tonight without Stacey Jones and Origin rep Kevin Campion. All the action on NBN tonight from 8:30.
It was a repeat of last year's final in the Masters singles, with Maitland's Wayne Lambourne in blue up against Noel Waite from Windale Gateshead in the white and yellow. 76 bowlers entered this year's 50th annual knockout tournament at Lowlands, and just like last year, Wayne and Noel were the last two standing. It was a tight match that brought the small group of spectators to the edge of their seats. After the 17th end, the score stood at 15 all. But Lambourne steadily carved out his lead, eventually taking the game and the title 31-18. Meantime, the Waratah Women's Bowling Club today celebrated only its second pennant win in 40 years. The ladies last won a pennant in 1963 and this year defeated Lemon Tree Passage in the Group 3 final to earn their second flag. When the celebrations wear off, the ladies will play for zone honours at Charlestown next month. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It may have been a day for the best thoroughbreds to strut their stuff, but the talent on course at time rivalled that on the track. Horsefest helping draw around 5,000 to Scone Racecourse.
The crowds, I think, probably one of our biggest crowds ever. The racing's great. Yeah, one of our best, I think.
Scone Cup not only popular with the public, but also the stars of the racing industry.
Full credit to the club. Hopefully we can be successful.
The 160,000 two-year-old English Challenge held the richest prize purse today, with Newcastle hoop Alan Robinson saluting at the post, aboard Delusional. The 2002 Scone Cup is a proverbial scriptwriter's dream. Brave Prince, the top weight, going for a hat-trick of Scone Cup victories, but trainer Sterling Smith has to face a three-way onslaught from the stable of cousin Gai Waterhouse. Darren Beedman's win on the Graham Rogerson-trained Huge Demand, his third winner of the day. Together with Royal Integrity and C. Jester, it made for a healthy-looking trifecta. Gary Blair, NBN News.
The disused warehouse was well ablaze when firefighters arrived at the site off the New England Highway around 10 o'clock last night. The heat was so intense that the large iron structure quickly began to buckle and fall apart.
We've had crews from
the entire Maitland Fire District, Maitland, Morpeth, East Maitland and Talara. We've also had backup crews because we have had trouble with water supplies here, where we've had to relay pump from the New England Highway.
As a result, the highway had to be closed, and when water pressure was restored, the big gun went to work, pumping thousands of litres into the burning warehouse shell.
The building, unfortunately, was recently taken over by some local business approximately 2 weeks ago, and it appears that the cause of the fire might have been due to maintenance and welding being carried out this afternoon.
After 2 hours, the blaze was under control, allowing firefighters wearing breathing gear to search the building. The former textiles warehouse is now owned by Chinese interests who had planned to demolish the building to make way for a new manufacturing operation. Paul Lobb, NBN News. These are the wagons causing the fuss. The first shipment of 24 grain wagons manufactured in China arrived at Patrick's Western Basin dock at Carrington today. There to greet the ship were manufacturing union members who say the Chinese imports are displacing Australian workers.
The Australian government has allowed these wagons to come in, and they're saying that Australian workers have got to compete on the world market. Well, we don't argue against that, except how can we possibly compete against Chinese workers who are earning $2.11 an hour?
105 new wagons were ordered by Freight Corp before the state government sold the carrier to Patrick's earlier this year, so the union's main beef is with government policy.
We believe that these wagons, which were originally going to be manufactured in Newcastle by Ganinans, that those jobs that are lost will never come back unless this government changes its attitude.
You can't blame these city kids for looking a little sheepish. For most of them, this was their first encounter with one. The folk from Merriwar blew into Newcastle today with a ute full of merinos, then had Brindley the Wonder Dog round them up. The Woolies were in town to promote the Festival of the Fleeces at Merriwar in the Upper Hunter Valley this June long weekend, when the town is overrun with marching merinos in the main street.
It's a great opportunity for people to learn more about our history and our heritage of the wool industry.
Wool might be fashionable these days, but this is ridiculous.
It was a heartbreaking sight. As flames tore through the old National Textiles building, its new owners saw plans for expansion temporarily go up in smoke. The company, which repairs mining cables, was in the first phase of renovations at its new site. Rutherford Cable Repairs was planning to increase its workforce from 37 to 50 employees.
Possibly it means that we won't employ the full quantity of people. But if we have to hire another shed and put some people into that, then that's what's going to happen.
The blaze is believed to have started when insulating material caught on fire on Friday afternoon. It's estimated 40% of the building will now have to be demolished and replaced, the cost of which is likely to exceed $200,000. General Manager of Rutherford Cable Repairs, Peter Ryan, says the only consolation is no one was injured. It was also fortunate there was no equipment or cables inside. And after 20 years in the area, the company will forge ahead with its expansion despite the setback.
Yes, we will expand and we will get on with it. There's no troubles about that at all.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The kids keep on asking me, do this, and I'm like, I haven't skated.
William IV was built in the mid-1980s to recreate Australia's first steamship constructed at Clarencetown in 1831. Instead of becoming a tourist drawcard, the vessel has had a checkered history, only kept afloat by a small dedicated band of volunteers. On the slip at Forjac's dockyard this week for an inspection and maintenance, a report's also being prepared for owners Newcastle and Port Stephens councils on the long-term prospects for the 14-year-old craft.
Well, the volunteers have done a fantastic job of keeping it up. It's simply now getting too much for them, and the ship has reached a point in its condition where we have to really look hard about how we manage this well into the future.
The National Maritime Museum will also provide an expert opinion on William IV, which already has a growing repair list including decking and a boiler overhaul. William IV's future is expected to be decided within the next few months when a report goes to the vessel's owners, Newcastle and Port Stephens councils. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Around 1:45 this afternoon, a 48-year-old man from this unit in Carrington Street, Mayfield, ran to his neighbour for help with severe lacerations to his throat.
She called the ambulance and the ambulance arrived shortly afterwards, but unfortunately the man died at the scene at the house here.
A knife was found at the scene as police continued to scour the area for further clues. Police would like to interview a man who was spotted walking through nearby Danga Park around the time the man's throat was slashed.
At this stage, police are canvassing all the neighbours and we're just making inquiries with them at this stage.
Police say there appeared to be no evidence of an argument before the murder.
There's no sign of forced entry, but there is a lot of blood within the house.
The man's flatmate is not part of the police inquiry.
Well, police will work through the night and continue with the canvass and making further inquiries.
It's a plan of the grandest scale, and it will totally change the face of health services in the Hunter. The woman behind the project, Catherine McGrath, outlined her vision to the region's business community today. Set to further expand its role is the John Hunter Hospital campus.
We're seeing the John Hunter campus to become a health precinct, where you come for really the special, high-level, high-quality, what we call tertiary level, very specialised services.
Currently under construction is a child and adolescents mental health unit, while a bone and joint institute is also planned. Extra parking and a second access road is also in the pipeline, as are more commercial facilities.
Because there will be something upwards of about 6,000 people going across the site every day, we really see the need to provide those support services to make it very convenient for people.
Belmont Hospital will get a new emergency department and a drug and alcohol detox unit. Other projects include a new polyclinic for the inner city, the sale of the Royal and the redevelopment of the Mater Hospital. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Emergency services were called to this head-on collision between a car and a four-wheel drive on Summerhill Drive, Wangi late this morning. The rescue helicopter was already on the scene when a police rescue vehicle came into contact with one of its stationary rotors.
As the truck went past, the exhaust pipe, it had a vertical stack on the exhaust pipe, and it just scratched the bottom of the blade.
Rescue helicopter engineer Dave Oswald was called to Wangi to inspect the rotor and found the graze wasn't enough to ground the aircraft. The damage to Angel 1 comes just 6 weeks after the aircraft returned to the sky after an extensive major overhaul. The incident today didn't delay the accident response, with the rescue helicopter able to complete its mission. Pilot Osborne was glad he had the inspection carried out.
The rotor blades are the thing that keep you up there, and there was just no way I wanted to fly until David had a look at it.
2 women and a man were transported from the accident to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital in a stable condition with neck, chest and limb injuries. Police are continuing to investigate the crash. Gary Blair, NBN News. In just 15 years, the Wetland Centre has become one of the region's environmental jewels. To formally recognise its significance, an application is being prepared for protection under the Ramsar International Wetlands Convention. Shortland satisfies 3 of the 8 selection criteria, being regionally significant and a haven for internationally endangered birds.
One is the Australasian bittern and the other is the black-necked stork, and it was actually here last week. It was a very exciting moment for the wetlands. And the third one is that we support water birds at a particular stage in their life cycle.
Wetland Centre supporters and visitors are now being asked for written submissions to back the application. Across the water, Australian Conservation Foundation Vice President Penny Figgis inspected Tank Paddock at Minmai today ahead of asking Newcastle Council to consider the area for inclusion in the Hexham wetlands rather than a housing development.
It should be considered in an overall conservation strategy, not in a one-off rezoning.
Newcastle Council will tonight hear both sides of the Tank Paddock debate. The developer will tell Council the proposal does include substantial compensatory habitat to address environmental concerns. Gary Blair, NBN News.
It goes without saying that success in athletics is all about hard work, and for Alicia Spencer in recent times it's been a little tougher than usual. Tendinitis saw the 18-year-old told to stop running for 2 months, and she only got back on track in time for the Nationals in March, where she qualified for the World Junior Games.
I was more relieved than anything. I didn't really expect to get there, but luckily I did, and I was just so relieved.
At the moment, she'll contest the 4x100 relay in Jamaica, but is also hoping to race 2 individual events and is feeling strong.
If I'm running at my absolute best, hopefully I will make a final over there. But, I mean, just to get through the rounds would be wonderful for me.
Alicia can expect plenty of support along the way in the form of her training partner Ryan Turton, and vice versa. Also 18 and also returning from injury, Ryan's currently running times close to his personal best and has earned a berth in the 4x400 relay team for what will be his first overseas event.
I want to prove myself and be the best in the team, hopefully.
The pair head off to Darwin on Friday and go into camp with both teammates and the Australian Commonwealth Games squad before the World Juniors in July.
The yacht Wavyu Yachts was tied up at Nelson Bay Marina today, looking a little worse for wear. It was spotted yesterday coming through the heads at Port Stephens from the Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol Tower. In fact, police were distributing a picture of the vessel to the volunteers at the time, just in case they saw it.
They returned back down here to the Water Police station, and the Coast Patrol subsequently confirmed that it looked similar to the stolen yacht, and we went around there and confirmed that it was.
The French-built boat is believed to be only one of 3 of its kind in the country.
The boat was stolen last Friday on the 14th of June from Booker Bay Marina at Brisbane Waters.
A 33-year-old Lake Munmora man appeared in Raymond Terrace Court today charged with larceny and drug possession. He was refused bail and will reappear in Wyong Local Court tomorrow. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. Freedom Air flights from Auckland to Newcastle were launched with much hype and fanfare. But 6 months on, just how are the flights faring?
Well, Freedom Air got off to a terrific start during the summer holidays with people visiting friends and relatives. But since then, we've seen some drop-off in the number of passengers flying. And this is what Freedom Air calls one of the quietest travel times of the year.
An even mix of Aussies and Kiwis are using the service, but the majority of passengers flying into Newcastle are visiting family. Hunter Tourism says local tourism operators are not experiencing a surge in visitor numbers as expected. The peak body Newcastle Airport Corporation and Freedom Air are now focusing on encouraging more tourists and business-orientated visitors to use the flights.
So what we need to do now is to get the tourism travel happening and just try and get that year-round stable demand that we need to make this service viable.
But despite the lack of patronage, Freedom Air is committed to the route.
Freedom Air has indicated to us that they want to be with us for the long term. They would certainly at least like to see the first 12 months and to see what the seasonal cycles are there.
Newcastle Airport, however, is hoping the service is expanded in the future to include Christchurch. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
From building materials to bathroom essentials and everything in between, this community-based recycling centre is dedicated to reducing landfill.
We try not to waste anything, even shells of equipment goes to black metal scrap.
People are encouraged to leave their recyclables at the Refused and Reused Centre before going to the dump at no charge. Equipment such as old computers and TVs are then repaired and rebuilt in an old recycled chook shed. It's here that they're later resold to the public, along with a range of more sought-after pieces, such as antique furniture. The non-profit business is assisted by a team of volunteers, with proceeds going to a good cause.
Well, we use any of the money we make here to support local unemployed and people on work for the dole programs.
Meanwhile, Port Stephens Council is continuing its push for the state government to legislate for a refundable levy on containers. It says the scheme, which exists in South Australia, would not only encourage consumers to recycle, but also offset rising collection costs. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
For most of the 300 young singers, this is the biggest music group they've ever been involved with.
Every single one of the schools have their own individual choir, and that's really important that that's encouraged too. But as a big choir, yes, this is really one of the only chances that they get, unless they, of course, just been involved in Starstruck, which happened last week.
The Whitebridge High Choir, made up from the area's 7 feeder schools, will perform during Education Week in September. Meantime, it was a day of learning about Indigenous culture at Windale Public School. As part of a national week of celebration, students were shown everything from Aboriginal art to Indigenous food and traditional music. And some found out that it's not as easy as it looks. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's official. World Cup fever has taken over the Hunter. At MJ Finnegan's in Newcastle, soccer fans were literally spilling out the doors this afternoon, and the atmosphere was electric. While some were picking the winners on form,
I tell you, I think Brazil will come away with the win tonight, mainly because they've basically got good forwards up front, and I think they'll be too good for England.
Others couldn't see past the homeland.
The Queen's Jubilee, Lennox Lewis in the boxing, come on. Yes, we got it, mate.
It might come as a surprise to know that in a traditional league city like Newcastle, come kick-off there was no one at work, and it seemed everyone had turned into a pom. England's first goal was proof of that. We'll have a full match report later in sport. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
You could be forgiven for thinking Pecolbin had a touch of France today as cyclists bolstered the tourist numbers. Bicycle New South Wales, the organisation which promotes bike riding, is staging their first Cycle the Hunter Valley.
And we identified that some people like some good accommodation and a comfortable weekend away, which is a bit different from other things that we've done. And we picked the Hunter Valley because there's so many great attractions up here, and it's really good cycling country as well.
The cyclists brought a different hue to the tasting rooms of Tyrrell's Vineyard as the day-glow and lycra-clad visitors took time out to momentarily indulge. While the off-road treats are tempting, for some their motivation is the kilometres of road wine country has to offer.
The opportunity to do some of the longer rides this afternoon and tomorrow, I think, and visiting the chocolate shop.
Sports drinks may seem out of place among grapevines, but with 9 self-guided tours of up to 90 kilometres, the 80 participants have a thirst and hunger for the region. The organisers now aim to make Cycle the Hunter an annual event. Gary Blair, NBN News. The former BHP Steelworks is earmarked for the multi-purpose terminal. Some of the area to be reused for the project is now becoming evident as demolition work on the site advances. Newcastle Lord Mayor John Tate believes the state government must provide an urgent update on its progress with the MPT.
I think it's in the government's interest to confirm the progress on this site here. The opportunity for a container terminal to be established here is very, very good. What I'd like to see is that time frame compressed.
Newcastle's case for the terminal has been strengthened, with Southern Sydney councils concerned by the environmental impacts of an upgrade proposed for the Port Botany container terminal. Councillor Tate wants the government to realise both projects are needed.
We shouldn't see this as being in competition with Botany or Botany in competition with this.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
It would hold a very considerable amount of water, and I'd think it was probably supplying part of the settlement.
After qualifying strongly in the semis, Terrigal High and Westfield Sports High came up against each other today for the finals of the Open Girls CHS Knockout. Both sides showed determination, with Terrigal's Jacinta Goving proving unstoppable in attack, helping her side to a convincing lead going into the fourth term. Terrigal's most valuable player was Heidi Freeburn, after a convincing 64-49 win. In the Open Boys final, Maitland's Grosvenor High surprised many with their ability to keep their noses in front of the powerful Illawarra Sports High School. The home side actually held a 1-point lead heading into the final term, thanks largely to country rep Wayne Brown, but that's when the visitors really kicked into gear. Boasting no less than 3 state CHS representatives, Illawarra ran away with the match to win 96-74. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
The well-known cartoon characters will show their skating versatility this week with 10 performances of Disney on Ice at Newcastle's Entertainment Centre. Creating their centre stage is no easy task. A team of 20 today began preparing the ice rink with millions of dollars worth of equipment shipped in from the US. But don't get your skates on just yet. The frozen floor won't be ready until Wednesday afternoon.
and we have a couple guys basically hauling a fire hose over them, and you just start from the back end and work all the way back, get the floor pretty much flooded as much as you can.
The process is repeated for as long as 16 hours, with ice technicians carefully monitoring the temperature.
Basically the glycol or antifreeze flow through it constantly and just gets it really cold to freeze the water on it. Pretty much 10 minutes takes to freeze about a couple centimetres of water at a time.
Disney on Ice opens on Wednesday night. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
A spokesman for Michael Costa today confirmed the Police Minister won't be nominating for Labor pre-selection to contest Cessnock at next year's state election. Current member Kerry Hickey and Port Stephens country Labor colleague John Bartlett are among the first sitting Hunter members to possibly face a challenge for their seat. The ALP will accept nominations from tomorrow afternoon for the seats of Cessnock and Port Stephens. The party today confirmed Hunter Development Minister Richard Face has nominated to again contest Charlestown for Labor next March.
Well, I can't wait for the night's test between Australia and Great Britain. It's the first test in Australia since 1992, and both teams are in the middle of their season, which will mean everyone will be in form and fit for the one-off challenge. Now, English front rowers Terry O'Connor and Barry McDermott, I think, will be the linchpins for Great Britain. They're season-hard men and they've had plenty of run-ins with the Kangaroos in the past. I spoke to both the guys during the week, and this is what they had to say.
They're really tough games, aren't they? Yeah, they always are. You know, Australia, the world champions, and deservedly so. They're very tough up the middle and very skillful and silky out wide. It's going to be a great experience. I'm just looking forward to it. We've got Johnsy, Trent, Danny and Gordon, so it'll be a very tough side and a very tough ask of us, but we'll give it our best shot Friday.
Well, there's a one-on-one contest that's shaping up to be a dead-set little ripper. Kieran Cunningham on Danny Badiris. Now, Cunningham has been the world's #1 for some time now. He's built more like a front rower. He weighs over 100 kgs, and with all that, he's quite quick as well. But Badiris has unbelievable athleticism and work rates. He'll be one of the biggest hitters out there tonight, and he's such a delight to watch with the ball in his hands, particularly around the ruck. Now, they're two great players, but out of this clash, I think Badiris will realise very clearly how close he is to clinching that title of the game's #1 hooker. On to round 18, and I've tipped the Roosters over the Storm, Eagles, Broncos and the Dragons to win their games, along with the Knights, of course, Eels and the Tigers. Good luck for your tips. I'll see you next week.